Fernandez has more from Colombo.
The waters raged once again, sweeping everything in their path. Worst hit was the north-central province. Swollen irrigation tanks breaching their banks. One reported to have unleashed around 55,000 cubic acres of water. Many villagers were cut off by the floodwater, boats their only hope. Over 1 million people have been affected, and more than 230,000 have been forced to leave their homes for temporary shelters. In the Central Highlands, authorities issued a landslide alert and declared a state of emergency in some areas.
Our kitchen was buried by a landslide at the back of the house.
It wasn't just people facing hardships. This baby elephant was among the wildlife caught by rising waters. The military and police are helping with the rescue and relief efforts. But despite the devastation, there were some moments of hope. This baby born on a helicopter as her mother was flown to safety. In Colombo, charities are trying to gather food and clothing to send to victims. But they face a major problem delivering this aid, as many roads are impassable.
Emergency supplies and food stocks are being loaded up behind me to be taken to the hundreds of thousands of people affected by this latest round of flooding. But it'll take a whole lot more for those affected by this latest disaster to get on their feet again. Mubarak Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
Heavy rain in southern Australia has caused major flash flooding in the state of Victoria. Driving conditions were treacherous as 6,000 people were forced to flee their homes. The city of Mildura on the Victoria-New South Wales border was amongst the hardest hit areas after an estimated year's worth of rain fell in just one day. Now, Australia is also dealing with a wildfire emergency with several buildings destroyed on the country's west coast. More than 100 people were evacuated from their homes as gusting winds whipped up flames around the city of Perth. Authorities say the fires are burning in hard-to-reach areas and are using water bombers to help contain it. Now, we've got some breaking news coming to us in the Bureau here in London from our staff in our Pakistan Bureau. Apparently, 2 explosions have taken place in Baluchistan. One took place in an industrial area called Dera Bugti. Now, it's believed that 8 people have died there. There's been a second blast, that first blast was in the industrial area. The second blast was in Dera Bugti, where 1 person is dead and another injured. Now, as we get more details on that story, we will keep you updated. That's it from us here in London. It's back to Doha.
Time to update you on the top points out of Egypt. The outlawed opposition party there, the Muslim Brotherhood, has been meeting the Vice President. And representatives of the Muslim Brotherhood have told Al Jazeera that the group still does not trust the government to bring in the reforms that it has promised. Al Jazeera obtained video of protesters being gunned down in Cairo. The identity of the gunman is still unknown. Let's hear now from Bernard Smith, who has more on the day's protests so far.
Prayers in Liberation Square for the victims of the last 13 days of anti-Mubarak protests in Egypt. Christians and Muslims gathered to remember the estimated 300 people who have died. Outside the square, there's tight security, but signs of normal life. Banks opened for 3 hours for the first time in almost 2 weeks. Many people had run out of cash. And under a looming portrait of the man they want to get rid of, the banned Muslim Brotherhood and secular opposition groups held a first meeting with Vice President Omar Suleiman. The extent of the violence in other places in Egypt is now becoming clear. These pictures, obtained by Al Jazeera, show an attack by anti-government protesters. The target, a police station. The location, Old Cairo on Friday. It's scenes like these which have prompted calls from Western leaders for immediate changes in the regime. But the man the US sent to Cairo to help solve the crisis says he's not sure the president should go now.
President Mubarak's continued leadership is critical. It's his opportunity to write his own legacy. He's given 60 years of his life to the service of his country. This is an ideal moment for him to show the way forward.
The White House disowned the comments, saying they were private views. The Mubarak government is keen to show it's changing. But the protesters still insist nothing changes until the country's leadership does. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera.
And protesters continue to make their presence felt too in Egypt's second largest city, that's Alexandria. The central train station is becoming a focus of people's opposition to the regime. They've marched on the train station, and we can bring in Mohammed Sudan, who's in Alexandria, member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Tell us where you are and what's happening around you, first of all.
Actually, we have a big festival today. We have a big rally moving from the square called the Qadi Ibrahim Mosque Square. And they are now moving around the streets of Alexandria. The people coming up, maybe more than 500 to 600,000 people, and very happy, and they are insisting to erase the regime, the former regime. They are calling Hosni down, and all the regime, and we don't accept anything from the prime minister or the vice president presented. They said that this is false.
Mr. Sudan, I know you're there and I'm not there, but our correspondent a short while ago estimated the crowds to be between 2,000 and 5,000. What makes you think it's 400 to 500,000?
What I think, what? Could you repeat again, please?
Our correspondent said the crowds were quite small today, about 2,000 to 5,000 people, and yet you say there are maybe 500,000. Why do you think it's that big?
Those people is for all the kind of people of the Alexandrian people, and they have the same target, they have the same demand.
Okay, I understand that. Just let me ask you about the meeting today between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Vice President. How does that make you feel as a member of the Brotherhood?
Actually, we are very satisfied because this is the first time that the regime asked us to stay in discussion or a dialogue, and we are actually, we are not staying alone. We stayed with all the power of opponents in Egypt, not only with the Muslim Brotherhood, and we are talking not only for the special demands for Muslim Brotherhood, but we are asking for the demands of the Egyptian street, for all the Egyptian people in the street, all the protesters asking the demands for all the protesters from all sides, Christians, Muslims, everybody, all young children, everybody. We are among the Egyptian people. We don't have any special demands.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
One of those on the streets of Alexandria, on the shores of the Mediterranean. I think expressing the hope that maybe 400 to 500,000 people might turn out, rather than saying that's how many were there, because our correspondent was suggesting 5,000 at tops. But no doubt that the protesters, the demonstrators there, have decided to make their presence felt at the main train station in Alexandria. Let's bring in once again Salman Sheikh from Brookings, Doha. Let me ask you, I mean, he was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood who we were talking to there. It seemed to regard it as a really big step that the organisation, which has been banned since 1954, had actually been invited into the corridors of power.
Yes, it's very interesting hearing him, and interesting hearing his tone as well. There was definitely some genuine surprise and welcoming in what he was saying. What is true today, I think, is that the Muslim Brotherhood has arrived through the front door as a political actor, as a legitimized political party, taking part in the Egyptian political scene.
You were listening as I was talking to the Israeli former diplomat And we were examining the concerns that there might be in Israel about what's going on in Egypt. What struck you about that?
What struck me was how relatively easily he, the former diplomat, took the Muslim Brotherhood sitting at the table with the Vice President of Egypt, who's in effect conducting the talks and the negotiations on behalf of the regime.
Because his suggestion was that we shouldn't be too frightened of this because